Hey guys, this is Jasper with KoR Live. Just wanted to give y'all a little quick message before we get into tonight's regularly scheduled programming. If you hear my cat's collar shaking around in here, Shadow's over here cleaning himself. He's being a lot. But with that, I'd like to introduce you guys to part one of two of the Bigfoot KoR Live After Hours special. Just trying to get more of our paranormal stuff up here on the YouTube because that's been doing real good, real good. Appreciate everybody for supporting it and everything else. That being said, though, we are a primarily video game related channel, so if you like what you hear on this side, give the gaming side a shot. You might like it, you might not, but that's all good. But with no more further ado, let's get into tonight's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the almost famous sideshow KoR After Hours, where we offer only the finest of the finer things. Starring panelist Kai Norellin, special guest Kizari Iwakura, and I'm your host, Jaster Lane Wynn. Now let us take you behind the doors and show you the madness behind the magic. Alright, guys.
Hey, Jasper, what were you doing over at the door over there, buddy? Who are you talking to?
I mean, nobody. Nobody.
All right, well, get your ass over here. Come on, man.
Alright, guys. So, episode 2 of our new sideshow we got going on tonight. Got a pretty good topic, we think, planned out. A little different.
I hope so.
I think it's probably the most different kind of episode that we've done yet.
Easily going to be the most out there, I think, now and in the future.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Who knows? Maybe people will come back and look at this and be like, give us more.
We have a tangential connection to the last episode, if you really think about it.
In a way. So...
yeah.
Let's go ahead. Go around and around. Me and Kaz kind of in on this topic a little bit. Tonight's topic is Bigfoot, the game, and Bigfoot IRL. So,
yeah.
People probably don't know this about us, but me and Kaz here are Bigfoot believers.
We are.
To put it mildly. And going down the rabbit hole is almost a weekly thing for us, honest to God.
It really is, yeah.
And Kaiden's here because he's oftentimes the person that has to put up with me going down the rabbit hole for like days at a time. And he's also a pretty skeptical mind in general when it comes to paranormal things and all that.
Yeah, when it comes to the more like supernatural aspects of the Bigfoot sightings or even the dogman sightings and all that stuff, I'm usually the one's like, okay, let's dial it back a little bit and think about this for a second. But I mean, I can, as far as like Bigfoot goes, I can honestly believe that there's an ape creature thing out there that we just haven't seen because it's just very elusive.
I think like our proper like polite term for it that makes it sound all nice and scientific is undiscovered American hominid or something like that.
When were we polite in KoR?
I'm talking more among us Bigfoot folk.
Yeah, definitely either a relic hominid, or they would even call it a wood ape or a great ape successor. And we can go into all of that here in a bit. But first, let's go into one of the more enjoyed games in the last year that this guild's kind of found, and that's the Bigfoot Game, straight out of Ukraine, baby.
Yeah. Hang on, I don't have the studio pulled up here. Usually I have like a lot of notes and I'm ready to go, but because this is a more off the cuff podcast, I don't have my notes ready to go. Whoops. We were literally just talking about it and we just jumped into it. So yeah, shout out to our boys at Cyberlight Game Studio, who just recently had to relocate out of their home country of Ukraine because of the ongoing conflict that is happening there. These guys have a lot of passion for this game, and they put so much love into it, and it's kind of incredible seeing where this game was when it first launched and seeing where it is now. It's like a night and day
It
like
is.
difference. It's incredible. And what's
Yeah.
crazy about it is, like, honestly, it feels finished at this point, but it's still in early access, which, like, at this point I have to wonder, like, what are they adding, you know? So,
Mm-hmm. I'm only imagining more maps because they've already released the name of the next map's going to be Redwood.
ooh, Redwood Forest. Oh
I would
boy.
Sounds
I would
Get some
imagine.
California Squatch up in here. Very
Yeah,
nice.
I'd imagine that they'd release different types of Sasquatches that have different abilities or whatnot for like those who play as them. But they
Mhm.
probably also have to do some balancing with that because I mean, from what I've seen with the Bigfoot, like when someone's playing as Bigfoot, they can kind of at some points just track down the players kind relatively quickly and
Mhm.
just roll them on night one before they
Yeah,
before
it's this is definitely more a PvE game. The PvP is very unbalanced, unfortunately.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's probably what they're going to be focusing on. At some point down the road in terms of getting it out of early access because I mean that part would just
That would
I,
suck if you're trying to play online against randos. For
Mhm.
sure.
mhm.
So to kind of pitch the premise of the game to you guys, uh, listening back at home. So the premise of Bigfoot is that there have been a bunch of murders in various national parks, and the national parks have been having to close down. They've called in a team of experts, and who are coming in to eliminate the source of the problem, which is Bigfoot. He's now unlike so because this is a video game, the Bigfoot in this game is a lot more violent. Um, he's a man eater. Um, like he tries to yoink people and eat them. He'll beat the piss out of them with his big old hands and do pick up signs and throw them like spears and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Um, it is up to you and a team of up to three other players for a total of four to track down not only the remains of his victims, find evidence of him in the park, and also take him out. And then once you kill him, take him with you so you can prove he's real. And that's the whole game. It's basically like if you've played Monster Hunter or something like that. It's kind of like that. The difference is you only have the one monster, and you don't have the cool gear. Okay, actually, it's nothing like Monster Hunter. I'm just trying to think of something
I
as a
would say
vaguely
it's
similar
I was
closer
premise.
to Dead by Daylight.
I was
Oh, Dead by Daylight. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a better comparison.
I was about to say, knowing Jaster's luck, if this was like Monster Hunter, we out there hunting down Bigfoot, and all of a sudden here's a Tigrex coming after us.
Real talk. Real talk. But it's definitely been the source of some of the best moments of stupid shit that we've gotten into in a very
Yeah.
long time.
Oh,
Especially Kaz
100%.
like hiding out in a tent with a fucking
Oh
burned
man.
house waiting
Uh,
for us to
okay.
come back to the trailer.
Oh man. Yeah. No. Okay. I have a couple stories to tell about this game. Like the one Jaster just mentioned. So this was like pretty much the first week we had the game, and we were still trying, we're feeling it out, and we were all really enjoying it because this is a game that's an absolute blast with friends. Like the more buds you can get to play this with, the better. So the PvP mode is 5 players because you got the four hunters and then the Bigfoot. So we had a full party, and I was playing Sasquatch this time. And for most of the game, they've been kind of giving me the runabout. They lured me into a couple traps they set up, stuff like that. But I finally got smart. So what I did was I made them think I was following them. And then what I did was I circled back around and I headed to base camp because I knew they would have to head back there eventually. Um, and so I'm literally sitting in one of the tents at base camp. I've got a sign in my hand, and I'm just waiting for them to roll up. They roll up. One of them walks into the tent. I want to say it was Devin. And it takes him a moment for him to register I'm there. And as soon as it does, I'm already beating him with the sign. I
my
basically
God.
jump out, and I just waste the whole party because they were ready for me to appear there. So,
Hmm
It was bad.
mhm.
I think my favorite story on there was, like, coincidentally seeing this happen third person. It's like our biggest inside joke about Bigfoot in the game. Is it was me, Kaiden, I think Devin or Archer, and Soda. Okay, this is when things get like wild. Is when you add Soda in the mix in any of our stories. He's our resident trollmeister over here, so he'll test the game. He's that guy. He wants to push stuff to the limits and see what he can do, and he'll try and make the weirdest dumb shit happen all the time. He was the one that found out that Bigfoot has a stamina bar in PvE. That way, if you just keep on pushing him and you can heal through it or dodge through it, he will leave you alone for like a day or two. So, we were in the middle of this ravine with a creek running through it, and me and Kaiden are running to Soda after we just got walloped and we had to fall back, and we were trying to get like Devin or Archer to come with us, and Soda was playing as, I think his name is it's not Rick, it's the
each of the hunters is named, and they have like a very quick backstory.
Yeah.
And like a specialty.
Yeah,
like,
he was playing as the demolition expert, which is the black character.
Yeah,
His
he
name
was
I cannot
the
remember.
ex-cop guy whose family got murdered by Bigfoot while he was on vacation, so he became a Bigfoot hunter. I love that. I love how they all have backstories. So
Yeah, it adds a lot of flavor to the game.
right.
Yeah.
So by the time Soda, like, we had all started shooting him, and Soda was low on ammo, so he pulled a butcher knife out, and you just see him disappear into the bush. All right. So we weren't thinking too much of it, and we were back firing at him, right? And we couldn't see him, so we started moving up. Well, what had happened is him and Soda, Bigfoot and Soda, got into a tussle in the creek. Okay? And he's like chopping at him with a butcher knife and everything. Okay? So by the time me and Kaiden come up at him and we're pointing guns over the creek at him, Bigfoot is sitting here staring at Soda like 15 feet away from him, actively trying to back up, while Soda is bloodied with a butcher knife, slowly advancing on him. And all of a sudden, he just books it into the woods, and you just hear Kaiden go, "Bigfoot's racist." And like, holy crap, that was like, we all died for a good 10-15 minutes. It's like all you saw was Bigfoot running away from fucking Soda with a knife in his hand. So our new strat now is, like, for the first night or two, because he doesn't like to attack for that long, we'll all jump him with melee weapons. Or, like, if we can't hit him with a flare, we usually hit him with a flare first before we jump him. But we definitely are not worried about close quarters combat with Bigfoot now.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed that the last time I played the game with you guys, it seemed like the main strat Jaster you employed was set everyone else on fire.
I actually have another story to tell about this game. So this was just after the most recent map came out, Yellowstone. It was literally just me and Devin. This was it had been a while since we got to have some quality time, because me and him are like super tight bros. I don't know if the lore's been dropped on the podcast, but me and him live in the same town, and we've known each other for like almost 8 years now. So we're like super tight, super bros. So anyways, we're kind of trekking around the map, kind of getting a feel for it, and we realized at this point we're more than kitted out to take on Bigfoot. We've been kind of playing it cautiously. We'd gather resources during the day. Night times, we'd hunker down somewhere, and then once the sun rose again, we'd head out. And we were keeping track of Squatch, on the trail cams and all that stuff. So we always knew where he was in position to us. We had the stockpile of about 5 or 6 explosive objects. In this game, you can get stuff like propane tanks, car batteries, fireworks, stuff like that, and basically set them up, and once Bigfoot comes near them, you can shoot them, and it sets off an AoE. So what we did was, we got one of these, and we put a bear trap on it. Now, at some of the camps around the map, there are guitars that if you interact with them, you'll strum the strings, and if Bigfoot is near, he'll hear them and he'll come running. So we get these explosives down. We set the traps. He and I are in 2 different cabins sitting right across from each other, and we both have our guns aimed right at this. I strum the guitar string and I book it right back over to my cabin. Sure enough, here comes Bigfoot. Bam! Right in the bear trap. So we hit the explosives. And we just start loading into him. So he runs away because after he's not as confrontational during the daytime. This is happening during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're like, what if we did that again? So we set it back up. I did it again, and this dumbass comes right back and falls for the exact same fucking trap. We did this 2 more times, one of them having bait on the trap, and we literally killed him this way. And we were laughing our asses off the whole time. It's literally 2 people sitting in the exact same locations. He knew we were there. He'd attacked us in some of those cabins, too. He knew we were hiding there, but he kept coming back because he heard that fucking guitar. So we were just sitting there, just letting him have it. And we finally just took him out, just the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Because this fucking moron didn't figure out, oh, hey, maybe I shouldn't step in this thing, and maybe they're trying to get me over there. What are they like? Oh my god, it was so funny. Like, oh my god,
Sounds
like
like
I-
hates country music.
it
Yeah.
was, it was
Bigfoot,
wonderful.
not a Garth Brooks fan, confirmed.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Get that
But,
jackass shit out of here.
You know,
You know-
no Clear Creek Water revival.
No.
No, sir.
That may be a future update though. Is it like where they improve his AI, where you strum that guitar? He comes in the
Mhm.
first time, he gets to the trap. The second time, he comes from another direction.
Yeah, because he came the exact same direction every single time. He came up the same lane,
It sounds
right
like
into the bear traps. It was definitely us exploiting the AI, but like
yeah,
we
pathing.
weren't like the second time we did it, we were like, is he gonna do it again? And once he did it again, we were like, okay, we're exploiting this, and so
Reminds me of the time we almost killed him the first time, and we got him down to 1 HP because me and Archer were exploiting his pathing. When you jump from a porch to the ground, he'll run back through the house instead of trying to jump over something at you. So we were literally hopping back and forth like across a guardrail onto a porch and shooting him when he's in the house, and when he's too close, jumping back off, waiting for him to get back out of the house, and then jumping back on the porch. And like we got him down to 1 HP before dying, and yeah, that was rough. It's like he actually clipped me once, killed me, and then like Archer was fine, but Bigfoot literally his hitbox went through the porch and got him. And it
Yeah.
was like, it was rough.
did we mention that this game is in early access?
Yeah, right. I mean, couldn't convince me. Sometimes there are finished games that don't play as good as this game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is a very solid, like, it's a very solid, like, design concept, you know, just like, and like, the thing is, like, the part of the joy of this being early access is, like, pretty much every time we come back to this game, there's something new to it. I remember, like, when we first picked this up, we had a problem with, like, how the inventory worked, and trading things to each other. It was very clunky, and then not even, like, a month or 2 later, it had been improved vastly, and it was way smoother.
Definitely.
Like these guys are on their shit, and like there are people who throw stuff up on early access just so they can shit things out into the Steam library. These are guys who are passionate about what they're working on, and we honestly implore you that you support them by buying the game, getting the DLC, you know, donating to them, whatever you can, because like these guys, they're legit. So
It's the new
I think
age of
it-
indie developers. New
Absolutely.
age of indie games.
yeah, man, anybody can get into the game now. Like you don't gotta be at Nintendo or wherever.
Now, so you were wanting to go ahead and segue into the rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
so unlike in the game, Bigfoot in real life usually isn't that dangerous. But before we get over to that topic, you know, we should probably just cover the basics really quickly. You know, Bigfoot or Sasquatch has kind of been in and around the consciousness of man for pretty much all throughout history. There are lots of figures in various Native There are many figures across all the Native American tribes and their folklore that resemble Bigfoot in some description or another. Um, um, there are old news reports from the 19th and 20th century about wild men, and then of course there's the most famous bit, um, the Patterson-Gimlin film, which was the first ever filmed instance of the Sasquatch, featuring the subject that we all lovingly refer to as Patty, um, because we're like 99% certain that it's a female.
Definitely.
um,
An interesting
Kate,
addition.
Caden's sitting here rolling his eyes because he's like, "What do you mean you know it's a female?"
No, I mean big old titties on it, dude. 100%.
Dude, yeah, you can see those knockers, like legit.
It's wild. Like,
It's crazy. Like it's like what
the
film? It was
evolutionary
like
purpose of this.
what kind of film were they using in? I forget what millimeter it was.
Oh, it was like, I don't know. It was definitely older. It was like 1960s era camera because I'm pretty sure one of them was working around the Hollywood industry at the time
Hmm.
and was able to like get a hold of some decent film. Like, but the problem was the camera that they were setting up. It took minutes to set up. Like, apparently they had been around that particular specimen for a while and they were tracking it for hours.
Hmm.
And whenever they had finally gotten to the point where they felt like they could set up on a valley, he was setting up on it because the other guy had kind of went ahead to kind of see if he could find it or get a sighting on it, and set the camera up really quick and got that footage as it was kind of walking away from him. Apparently he was a lot closer coming out of the bush in the beginning when he decided, oh crap, it's time to set my camera up.
And see, what's wild about that is the conditions that they filmed it as well. So Bluff Creek, the location where they filmed that, there had been a huge flood through that location recently, so it was all dried out, and this kind of like clearing basically had been formed by all the water being like dragged through there, and there were lots of trees and stuff that had been dragged in, um, and it just made this kind of perfect, um, like perfect spot for it. So the film itself runs for just under a minute at 59.5 seconds and runs at 16 frames per second. Um, and if the film was shot at 18 frames per second, as believed, then the event itself lasted a little bit underneath a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the generally accepted date it happened was October 20th, 1967. This has kind of become kind of muddied through retellings over the years.
Yeah, because they were way out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Like way back in the 60s, or right?
It was 67. So yeah.
Not to say they couldn't have figured out what date it was, but when you're out there in the woods for a long time, I can tell you dates get a little muddied.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the most famous moment of it is frame 352, where mid-stride, Patty turns her head to look at the men, and then she casually goes. If you've ever seen a picture of Bigfoot, you've seen this pose. You know what it is. It's got the one arm swinging forward. It's got the one arm swinging forward. It's got the other arm swinging backward. Got the legs sticking out forward. The other one's kind of hidden behind a bit of debris, and the face is facing like towards the viewer. And the reason why the Patterson-Gimlin film is so important in Bigfoot folklore is it's the bedrock basically.
Mm-hmm.
There are many like clips of Bigfoot that come and go. Many are debunked. Others are just kind of shrugged and dismissed. There are some that we hang on to as nuggets, but this is like the holy grail. Basically, all cryptid researchers want this kind of footage for whatever they're researching. Because to this day, there have been many attempts by all sorts of people, like TV studios, filmmakers, scientists, to recreate the kind of movement that's displayed by Patty in that film, and and time again, what's come up is, well, one, if it's supposed to be a costume, nobody's been able to make anything that looks remotely that lifelike with the amount of muscle texture and everything that's in that. And two, humans just cannot recreate the motions that specimen is going through as it walks across that clearing.
They've had multiple people within body mechanics and other scientific fields like primate locomotion even analyze the film, and they all come to the same conclusion. Like, that's not a movement a human can actually accomplish, which is kind of wild. Like, our feet would essentially pull to that side no matter what we would do.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, if you watch the film, Patty is basically walking, and as she does, she puts her knees at like 90 degrees, so her feet are facing directly downward with each stride. It's wild. Like, we always walk, some part of our foot is always touching the earth, but not her. And that's why we all point at Patty. Just because, like,
It's an unexplained occurrence, and you can't explain some of these scientific things away whenever they've brought in scientists that specialize in that outside of the field and outside of the belief structure of Bigfoot, and they can't explain it. And some of these people even start looking at that, especially Professor Jeff Meldrum, who was a Bigfoot skeptic, and he was a part of studying how feet profiles are in great apes. And basically his explanation is each footprint of a ape is essentially a fingerprint or a signature. Everyone's individually different, and there's dermal ridges that make up essentially the same thing that our fingerprints are made out of all over the feet of modern primates. And he went in there as a skeptic, and he came out a believer. He was like looking at the casts that they had taken from the Patterson Gimlin film Encounter. He genuinely could not explain it. And he was one of them occurrences where it changed his life, and he's even been out in the field with Bigfoot research groups where they have somewhat strong evidence that there's occurrences happening in their area, and they'll invite him out, and he'll go out there and they'll film it. And there are some times where I can't remember who exactly the group was. Might have been Todd Standing, actually, which I'm not exactly a fan of for
no,
other reasons.
I'm not a fan of Todd Standing either. I think he's a hack.
I think he fabricated the films where he felt like he got like 15 feet from him and stuff, but they did take him out to a place where they've had activity in the past with Jeff Meldrum, and he didn't go back thinking he was conned. So,
but kind of circling it back around to Patty. So after that, this was when the film began getting circulated on television. There were specials about it. And from that moment onward, the legend of Bigfoot was born, and it firmly cemented itself in the American popular consciousness. And then things like Legend of Boggy Creek came out, and that only helped to further cement it. But that's more or less the basics of it.
Exactly.
Bigfoot is this bipedal hominid with extremely large feet, generally. It is some kind of ape or man or both. And it's out there in the wilds of North America, and there are tons of reports of it every year. There are people who take pictures and photographs and film it. And yeah, so actually, let's hold up a moment. Caden, what you got to say about this?
Well, as far as all this stuff goes, the various groups and the people involved, everything, you guys are a hell of a lot more knowledgeable than I am, to be honest. I mean, as I said, I'm perfectly fine with accepting the fact that there could be a large bipedal, creature out there that we just haven't found.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, the most thing I could think of at this point was like remembering an old Mitch Hedberg joke. He's like, I believe that Bigfoot is naturally blurry. And that makes him even more frightening because there's a large out of focus creature out there.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got a T-shirt that says Bigfoot World Champion of Hide and Seek.
One of my favorite jokes that people get is when they are like, "Look, I've got this Bigfoot photo," and it's a blob squatch.
Yeah.
Or it's a stump squatch.
I made a similar joke about my character in 14. I said, here, look, I drew my character in just a blank page.
Yeah.
Right.
Always hiding.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just always hiding.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Always in that ninja stealth.
I guess. So I guess we'll lay some ground rules here so we don't go too far down the rabbit hole.
These are mainly for you.
Go as far as you want. I'm just here for the ride.
As far as what the Bigfoot community would consider the flute player side of it, the notion that this is a furry, gentle giant that goes outside and some old lady has one living in her trash can and she feeds it every day and that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're generally not of that level. We're not a part of that part of the community. There's some things that I'll bring up on my side of the argument that do tie into a lot of folklore historically, especially out in Europe actually. But we'll go ahead and keep it from the foofy side of it. There is a UFO connection, we can get into that too, but we can generally stick out of the crazy stuff. Now, there are graphic warning for explicit material incoming for anybody that doesn't want to hear that kind of thing. We're probably going to get into some more detailed encounters that might be a little spooky for people, so fair warning.
But before we do that, it's time we hit our third bullet point here, because Jasper's a little high as we're recording this. Yeah, man, that's just how Jasper functions. We're going to talk about how we actually got into the subject. And since I'm speaking, I'll just go ahead and take my turn, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, when I was a little babby Kazari Jr. in elementary school, our library had a shelf specifically for folklore and paranormal. One shelf, it was divided in two. One cubbyhole shelf was all the ghost books. So if you're a Southern boy like me, 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey and all that good stuff. And then the other side of that shelf was cryptids. There were some books by this author I have long since forgotten the name of that introduced me to creatures like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Jersey Devil, Mothman, and stuff like that. And it just captured my imagination at a young age. The idea that there are these, unknown animals out in the world. Because I know nowadays we live in an age where everything is connected together, and it's a lot harder to get away from that kind of thing. But you gotta remember, this was back in the day where we were only just coming off of dial-up. Broadband was still pretty new. People still had corded phones in their houses, etc., etc. I mean, I'm saying that, of course, both of the other guys in the room with me are older than me, but it's still worth stating,
He's not that young.
Yeah. It's not like a 20-year gap. It's maybe 8 or 10, something like that.
I don't even think it's that far for me and you personally.
Yeah, maybe. Just turned 25, so.
Yeah, but for me, if you're 25, then for me it's 11-year gap.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about corded phones. I remember the freaking rotary phones where it's you spin the dial.
And you let it spin back, and then you spin it again. Yep.
Yeah, I had one of those.
I do remember them. Those were nuts.
And
Yeah.
so from there, I jumped on to the early internet. This was back before the internet was centralized, and we had a lot more tiny sites dedicated to these kind of things. And I would just spend hours and hours and hours on Google Images, just looking at stuff related to this. And I'd watch TV specials and everything, and it just became a special interest for me at an early age. So, and it's something that's stuck with me throughout the rest of my life. Like, I've become interested in things, and interests have come and gone, but I've never lost my fascination for the unknown, and especially in regards to Bigfoot. So, that's my story.
Okay. I guess, Kaiden, you don't really have any in parts with it, or do you want to get into your part of the encounter, like anything, or
I
continue
mean, I've
before I go ahead?
I've
Yeah, I
never
think.
had any encounters myself. I
Mhm.
mean, most of what I know about Bigfoot is what I've seen on documentaries and such. Um,
Mhm.
I'd never really like, gone deep in the rabbit hole, as you might say. I just, I look at it, think, oh, okay, that's pretty good. Um, it,
Surface
it
level.
yeah, sort of. It wasn't until I started like, getting to know you guys where all of a sudden it's like, okay, UFOs coming to the picture. It's like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, let's start checking our hats for tinfoil linings here. Come on, guys.
Hey
But
man, I'm not I'm not gonna go full Fox Mulder on you, okay, man?
yeah, well, I mean, but it just, I mean, some of the stuff it yeah, I mean, some of our conversations get wild and wacky about these about the cryptids, but it's like I said, it's that led me to be like, I guess you say like the voice of like, okay, let's
There might be
let's
something.
well, it's more like, let's reel it back a little bit. It's like, how do we know that this thing could like shoot lasers from its eyes or something?
Yeah,
do
exactly.
or, or
you
how do
do
we know
you
that or how do we know that this creature can like emit a noise that can paralyze people? It's like,
Well, see, I have this very accurate description of Bigfoot. Actually, he's about 5 foot tall. He's Canadian. He's usually got about a 5 o'clock shadow on him. He reeks of beer, and he's got these metal claws that can pop out of his hand.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Definitely.
oh,
Well, we can get into infrasound because, like, honestly, we can
Jaster,
go
you
ahead
haven't
and
told. Whoa. Hold your horses there, cowboy.
I
You
know.
haven't told
yeah,
your origin story yet.
yeah,
So,
you have like actual like encounters almost, don't you?
Yeah, no, you're the only one out of us that has like actual legitimate experience with Squatch.
so what's so wild about that? And I was going to leave that until the end so we can go ahead and get into encounter stories right after the what how we got into it kind of thing because mine's kind of got a sordid history with this individual, and it took me years to even register what had happened, like what possibly that thing could have been. It was a part of my life where I was kind of shutting memories and past things out anyway. So when this kind of came back, it was kind of like, whoa, wait a second
Yeah,
here. And I had a real moment, and like me and my parents came in and talked together, but I'll go ahead and start from the beginning.
yeah.
I grew up around the time of Monster Quest. Okay?
Hell
So,
yeah, that was my jam. Absolutely
same.
garbage show. Still loved it anyways.
But it introduced a lot of these creatures and other things from folklore into the general scape. Turns out, like, half of their episodes are about Bigfoot anyway. So I
Yeah.
think it's a
Hmm.
progenitor to finding Bigfoot, and
Hmm.
that's how I got into it. Now, me being a kid, I had a wildly active imagination. Like I would run out into the woods anyway as a kid with like sticks and like like a garbage can on my arm, pretending
Hmm.
I'm Link from Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to find a cave or something.
Hmm.
And that's another thing because that's kind of a way I got into something a little bit later. But I was always in the woods. I had been pretty much half and half in the woods or on the internet growing up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to these Bigfoot encounters, and I grew up in Appalachia, basically, and my family still lives in that area. And knowing those woods, knowing the type of wildlife that are in those woods, knowing how derelict it can get out there. I don't know,
Yeah.
my 5-year-old brain was like, I think it can happen. Okay? And there were already a lot of wild things happening in our little holler, as we called it. Like, in our local area, like valleys or hollers, because you can holler across them and hear your neighbor.
Well, no, a holler is like a small valley.
Mm-hmm.
Because like there's a difference between like a valley and like a holler. Because like a holler, like that's you could walk from one side of a holler to another one and then go up the other hill, right? A
Yeah, it's
valley,
not too bad.
that's yeah.
So, we lived on one that was notorious for meth production. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and there were already crazy neighbors happening all the time, things happening at night all the time, and like my parents always kind of just taught us how to survive and how to, well, we learned how to shoot at a young age, to be fair, in order to defend yourself if something happened, because crazy neighbors or wildlife outside, because we had reported mountain lions in the area, because our area had a lot of big cat refuges that went out of business during the 80s, and they just let them go before the feds came in and hit them with federal crime. So they were already like, okay, just in case a random cougar is out here, he needs to know how to use a gun and carry it at night. Okay? So we were already kind of let onto the fact that, yeah, some wild things can happen. And whenever I hear about this Bigfoot as a kid, oh my God, I got paranoid. Not even gonna lie to you. And not a whole lot of what happened to me when I was growing up actually registered at the time as potential Bigfoot activity. Like I said, until like probably last year or year before, whenever we went down the rabbit hole and started really getting into stuff. And the first encounter I had was actually one of those things where I didn't even really remember it too well until we heard the Umatilla Reservation video. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with that, it's a reservation up in the Northwest, and it's a video where a man in the middle of the night is recording on his cell phone, and he's like, listen to this. And it sounds like, I don't know, it's it sounds apish, but almost sounds like it's mimicking hyenas or dogs.
There's some kind of vocalizations, and they are just echoing all across the landscape, and you can hear these things very clearly. And it's like 3 or 4 different recordings of it, and I've never heard anything else like it. It's genuinely like, what is that?
Exactly. And when I heard it for the first time, it brought me back almost to where I was 7 or 8 years old. And it was the middle of the night, probably 11 o'clock. All of us are out, like, I wouldn't say out, but like either on the porch or watching TV inside, watching a movie on ABC usually. And suddenly, like, I'd say a good 4 or 5 miles away, not across just the holler, but across the highway 2 miles out in that section of the lake that I live near, started hearing what could be considered coyote calls. It sounded like yipping, but the problem was it was moving fast, and whatever it was yipping at a rate of probably a dozen times every 4 seconds, so like 3 times a second probably. And it was moving quick across the highway and up into the woods at like 11:30 midnight. Okay. Now, my dad and I were outside just kind of, enjoying enjoying the night and everything. It was really beautiful that night, Fireflies were really common back then. I can imagine they were probably out that time of year. I think it was October, maybe November. And something didn't exactly set well with my dad. Like, I thought it was just coyotes because that's what they sounded like to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were used to spotlighting them, shooting them, because we didn't want them around the chickens, we didn't want them around the horses, all that kind of stuff. And there's older people living across the hill that have wildlife. We're trying to keep general predators like that down. And what got me was I was used to going and getting the spotlight, and he was about to go get the 30-06, and yeah, you know what I mean. And instead, he looks at me and he goes, "Bring the dogs inside." And we had outside dogs that were never allowed inside. And at that point, he goes out with his 357 and gets the horses and get them in the barn. Now, that requires him to get them from outside in the pasture into the the side yard and into the barn, which was not really connected to our pastures at the time. The problem was we don't really have a good sight line of the pastures, but we do the barn. And he gets back inside, and my mom's kind of like, "Oh, what's happening?" And he just kind of looks at her and goes, "Coyotes." And at that point, they had been getting louder and louder and louder, but they were very loud. I mean, louder than any coyote I've ever heard in my life. Now, like, coming to think about it a year ago, like, listening to coyote calls in packs, a couple of things were different. Decibels, very loud. Louder than coyotes that I've ever heard of. B, the frequency of the call. Like, coyotes, even in packs, don't continuously call to each other. They do it very seldomly, maybe once every 2, 3, 5 minutes in order to make sure that everybody knows where they're at. But they're still trying to hunt. So they're not trying to be very loud. So why would they be calling so loudly and so rapidly? And I mean, my parents were visibly freaked out. My dad had the hunting rifle, and he was out looking dead at the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom took us downstairs, had a gun, everything.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised as a kid because, like I said, if it was coyotes, we'd be out there shooting them.
Yeah.
So I go and I talk to him about it, and my mom was like, "Yeah, we didn't know what that was, but we knew that wasn't coyotes." And that was kind of wild to me because I thought it was an active imagination thing as a child, you know?
But nope, it was a real incident.
And it was verified by my parents. And my mom's kind of like me. She's apt to believe things, but my dad's a very hardline thinker, and he grew up out in the woods himself, and he said he straight up couldn't explain what it was. And later, there was an incident that happened after we had moved out that happened to them that I'll get to after a while. But my second encounter-ish, it wasn't really a visual thing, but it was definitely weird activity, was over at my biological father's place, like a couple of counties over. Little beknownst to me at the time was a Bigfoot hotspot area. And I was running around those woods like nothing was a problem, okay? Just like I owned the place. Like, traveling between neighbors' places, I was walking like miles a day out in the woods with my dog, no problem. We were setting up secret bases for other, like, to go and, like, play war with other kids in the neighborhood, everything like that. And, well, one day I was up and I was wanting to scout up above the ridge line because, like, one of the parts of the holler was kind of adjacent to a giant ridge with a giant rock face that had a deer line, and coyotes would run it too, but a general game trail was running the edge of the holler. Now, I always got a weird feeling about that place, but it never really dawned on me. But that would be a perfect predator observation area. And I went up over the hill, and we used to have like little bases carved and placed with like metal sheets along the ridge line and everything to kind of make like old style Navajo or Native American style settlements built into the cliffside and stuff. It was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my dog had went up over the cliffside, and she was a old mutt that we think had coyote in her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very savvy, very smart dog. And she generally would just chill behind me, not be pretty content with herself. But this time it was different. Like, she was ahead of me. She was alert. She was scouting around. She was keeping an eye on me. And I had just this uneasy feeling. Like I was being watched. And normally I don't have that uneasy feeling when I'm running around those woods. Especially as a kid, because I was owning the thing. You know what I mean? Like, those were my woods. Okay? And, I mean, obviously, folly of a child to think when he's like 9, 10 years old that he owns anything out in the woods. But that was my natural haunt.
Yeah, no, kids go like, I play here all the time. This is my place. That's just the thing kids do.
Mm-hmm. So the dog was acting wild, like ultra alert, and we had come up to this area where it looked like a house had been built, I would say 20, 30 years ago at the time, so it's probably 40 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And it had been ripped apart. I mean, down there were just broken 2x4s and siding all over the place, and it looked like things had been smashed. Okay, like just beat to shit. And my dog was not having it, not having me being there. Like, she went from being like 15, 20 feet away from me to being like 2 feet away from me, and kind of not happy. And so at that point, like, I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, I don't know if I'm dumb enough to stay around here. And I had backtracked it out of the woods, back down into the house. And my dog never got in front of me at that point. She was always behind me, keeping an ear and even looking back into the woods. Now, like, there's a lot of stories that can corroborate that Bigfoot do not like dogs. Mm-hmm. Either they will hunt them, they will attack them, or dogs are very keen at noticing that they are there. Mm-hmm. Now, it was one of those things that I can't explain that as a Bigfoot. It could have easily just been a sketchy dude out in the woods. But the thing that really got me was there were talks and legends of Ape Canyon and other big-time-ish modern encounter stories where if you were to do something aggressive to these things and you went back to your house and it was maybe a mile or two away and you walked back to your house, they know where that house is now and they're coming. Because another big part of Bigfoot that people might not understand is, while it's considered a solitary creature, that's probably the least accurate part of Bigfoot research, is that if you see one, there's generally 2, maybe 3 in the area. That's something that multiple different research groups have corroborated over the years.
I believe they're referred to as troops, generally. And generally it's believed they roam an area of about, what was it? I was literally just looking at the page of it. Hang on. So once again, it's KoR After Hours. I don't have my notes.
Yeah, right.
So, generally, so this is going off of the, okay, so this is all hypothesis. If a troop of 4 Bigfoot need a home range comparable to a grizzly bear's, because a grizzly bear is an animal we have in North American nature that's closest to it in terms of size and what it would need to eat and diet and stuff like that. Grizzly bears roam roughly about 160 square miles of territory.
Mm-hmm.
So And that's just for 4 Bigfoots. That's a true. Again, this is a hypothesis. There's nothing proving it. We know that they typically do have troops, but we don't know how far they roam. So
It seems as though, according to some groups, that there are nomadic tribes of them, and there are more home-based tribes, depending on the region. Now, that all kind of ties into a lot of similarities they have to other great apes, including gorillas and chimpanzees. Mostly just because chimpanzees are nomadic to an extent. If they really feel like they have a territorial grasp on the area and it has enough food, they'll settle down. But generally, chimpanzees wander, while gorillas will wander time to time where food is prevalent, but when they do set up, they set up. Now, what's interesting is the gorilla was considered a cryptid in North Africa until it was discovered less than 100 years ago.
yeah.
So, people legitimately thought it was a cryptid animal, and we bagged one and brought it back. Or someone, I think a British explorer brought it back or something like that. But the encounter my parents had, and I don't really want to botch it or anything like that, so I'll give the general specifics of the night, was they're kind of getting on in years. My dad, he still wants to be able to defend the place, so instead of having guns that are a lot more powerful all the time around, now that he's a little older, he just packs an M4. You know what I mean? If you're getting past a couple of clips of that, I guess you're fine. So he has that next to the house instead, right? So they were sitting here one night, and they're used to hearing the meth lab people up the hill doing crazy stuff all the time, cooking in the woods. COs will come in, bust them. Stuff will happen all the time. So like I said, they make sure they keep themselves well prepared. And one night, they're starting to hear crazy racket in the woods. And dude's hollering, dude's shooting off, I believe. But he ends up getting into the trailer, and when my mom was sitting there listening out the front door, she was hearing what she considered to be marbling grunting that kind of sounded like a wheezy-ish kind of a raspy kind of thing, kind of, and it was making racket. It was breaking things, it was ripping up stuff, throwing things around, going nuts. And my dad was like, I ain't never heard nothing like that in my life. Nothing. It's like, if it was a CO raid, why would it sound like that? You know,
Yeah,
those are
exactly.
humans. And we had spotlighted stuff before. We had seen COs up there. Whatever it was, they tried to spotlight it. It was staying out of sight. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Now, that dude, he left less than a year later.
Yeah.
And whole new people ended up coming in. Now, my parents live next to a national forest. So if you look at the BFRO website, there's a suspiciously empty area around this national forest where there are verified sightings, but all around it, over like a 40 to 50 year period, you have investigated reports of sightings in that area of the state where they're from.
National parks, always a hotbed, never fails.
Yeah, there's too much open room, and diversity of wildlife generally is fun. Which brings me back to the game a little bit. I want the Everglades National Park. I want
dude! Skunk Ape map, let's go! Absolutely.
I want a Skunk Ape map. Because that one was the one that, some of these Skunk Ape stories are crazy. And now
Skunk
that we
Ape,
kinda got
Skunk
past,
Ape, Skunk Ape is the Florida man of Sasquatch, like, flat out.
Flat out, 100%. He's red-haired, stinks like ass, and is one of the most aggressive variants of the creature that people have reported. Like, there's a few others that are considered almost universally, what would I call, hostile. Like the Almas of Russia, you generally don't want to mess with them, or the Yeti, or the Yeti in Tibetan folklore.
Yeah.
But there's even one of the wildest things about the Bigfoot phenomenon is that you can hear things in Afghanistan, in the Afghan war, from soldiers that have encountered things like that. Or you can go in and hear about sorry. You can go in and hear about this happening in China, where they've had a long sordid history with a hairy man in the woods. And one of the bigger theories or hypotheses about Bigfoot in that area is that it's a descendant of Gigantopithecus, even though that's a pretty hotbed topic.
Yeah, that's wading into hotly debated territory.
Exactly.
Right there.
Hey guys, it's Devin. The gang recorded for about 3 hours, so I had to cut this one into 2. Hope you guys enjoyed part 1, and I will be releasing part 2 later on, either this week or the next. But I hope you guys had a good time listening. Thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Good night.